Today on Investigate TV Plus Weekend, parents unwittingly forced to allow their children to be product testers.
There is this assumption that if something's on the market, then it's safe. And as a first-time parent, I would have thought the exact same thing.
Plus, radio dead zones, a huge challenge for first responders, and many school districts remain in the dark.
We count on first responders for that safety. We count on police, fire, EMS. And if they can't do their job, then they can't keep our kids safe.
Investigate TV Plus Weekend starts right now. Hello and welcome to Investigate TV Plus Weekend. I'm Lee Zurich. Newly invented toys and baby products are being tested on your own kids in your own home. That's because in most cases, new children's products can hit the market without much oversight or testing. And the risks of potentially dangerous toys are only found after there are real problems with real babies. A mom.
The alarm bells were ringing very early on, and it was just ignored.
A pediatrician.
Babies died in those products, but it took thousands of sales for these things to pop up.
And a senator.
There were deaths and injuries that could have been prevented.
Three people with one concern: how baby products end up on the market and in our homes.
You wouldn't think that someone would be able to put something on the market that could potentially kill our infants, and the reality is that absolutely is the case.
Because real products end up essentially tested on real babies in real time.
Parents in general, they think that all of these products have been approved by a governing body, like the FDA does for medications. And there is nothing like that.
For all three, they can't talk about what's going on today without talking about what happened 5 years ago when the Fisher-Price Rock and Play was finally recalled, but only after around 100 babies died in the inclined sleeper, with reports spanning years.
I just really struggle to understand how we aren't taking what we should have learned from that and applying it.
They say that recall happened too late, and a delay could happen again with any number of baby products that go to market, particularly those aimed to help babies sleep better and relieve their exhausted parents. The concern has to do with the process. In the United States, products like toys and blankets and baby clothes go to market without the government's approval. Regulations and standards, in fact, typically come in after a product is already on the shelves.
Just because something is on the market and many people have bought it and it seems to be okay and parents recommend it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe.
And if there are safety standards, they're often initially voluntary, meaning companies choose whether to follow them, and they're often set through independent organizations. In the case of baby products, that's ASTM International, which hosts dozens and dozens of committees of experts, consumers, and industry insiders who decide the best and safest ways to manufacture products we all use every day. But that process is now facing fire. Critics say it has too much industry influence, reacts slowly, and relies too heavily on death tallies for action.
I think that one is enough, and I think the potential for more is horrific, and I think that we should be listening to the experts in this field when they tell us that it's not safe.
The latest product with alarm bells, weighted infant sleepwear, swaddles that contain weighted beads and are advertised by two major manufacturers to be a sleeping aid. It's a product category that's been in an ASTM committee now for 3 years, with no standards set.
It has been such a slow process.
But there's plenty of concern from doctors and government safety officials. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and other agencies say they're unsafe.
There's no evidence in babies that for sleeping babies that they're appropriate or safe. So we don't recommend them at all.
Dr. Rachel Moon is the Academy's chair for the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Task Force. She's been worried about the product since she heard of it.
An infant, their chest is not made of bone yet. It's all cartilage. And so if you put any pressure on the baby's chest, it'll just compress. And when you compress the chest, that makes it harder for the baby to breathe.
Doctors say, of course, it would be dangerous and unethical to test out various products and sleep theories on infants to see if they stop breathing. So recommendations come from what they do know about the delicate body composition of a baby.
They're more theoretical in that nobody has proven or disproven, but they are evidence-based in terms of the physiology and what we would predict in babies.
But what that means is instead of a scientific setup before thousands of products are made and sold, homes are the labs, parents the scientists, babies the test subjects. An impromptu home study that might turn tragic.
And then the data that then they use to make decisions are the number of dead children or injuries, accidents that have happened. And so it's a very reactive process rather than proactive.
Shayna Rayfield lost her daughter Claire in a safe sleep incident at daycare. She's now in the committee considering safety standards for infant sleepwear, where weighted sleepwear is currently in debate for voluntary industry standards. The current task, counting incidents possibly tied to the product.
It's really frustrating. There have been meetings where it's been mentioned that there aren't enough infant fatalities to consider this an unsafe product. And in my head, I'm like, so what's your number? So what number of children that have died would then meet the threshold for some of these manufacturers to actually consider it a hazard?
While many major retailers have already pulled weighted sleep sacks after various warnings, they remain on the market and legal. Now Senator Richard Blumenthal and other lawmakers have proposed a ban.
I don't want to see a repeat of the rock and play debacle, where there were deaths and injuries that could have been prevented, but the sales went on much too long. And we see the same kind of dangers here. Children, infants may be at risk.
While tackling individual products one at a time is one tactic Congress can take, Blumenthal says the root issue is the CPSC needs more people and power to educate and regulate.
So I'm concerned about reliance on any kind of panel or body outside the government's oversight and supervision. The kind of panels that the FDA has to review new drugs, I think, are a better way to conduct this kind of standard setting.
Our team has found other products that have languished in committees for years. For example, there's still no ASTM standard for infant support pillows, which have been on the market for at least 15 years and are associated with at least 79 deaths, dating back to 2010. Instead, the CPSC spent months creating its own standard, adding design restrictions, testing requirements, and warning labels. We've asked ASTM International for interviews. Every request has been declined. In August, we attended a meeting between high-ranking ASTM officials and Consumer Product Safety Commissioner Richard Trumka, where he questioned them about their process. Some of those officials gave us their business cards, but after we reached out, their communications team told us in an email they wouldn't go on camera. While the mom, the pediatrician, and the senator continue to push for changes for children's safety, Shayna remains on the ASTM committee and continues to voice her concerns for the process and what could happen if things don't change.
The small amount of time where you're gonna be sleepless and have to function and have this infant who is very needy, that's such a small blip in time to be able to then enjoy them for the rest of their lives. And to know that there are products out there that have taken that away from parents and that we're setting standards for products that may continue to do that is unconscionable. It's just hard to believe.
Even with new inventions, there are some broad federal regulations every company would have to comply with, even if a new product isn't specifically regulated. For example, there are flammability laws for children's clothing and sleepwear, and lead paint restrictions for kids' toys and furniture. Coming up, a father watches his daughter choke on what was supposed to be a child-safe device. how he turned that safety concern into a new product next. A child safety product turns into a child safety nightmare. A father notices his young daughter choking on an outlet plug he took out while vacuuming. The traumatic experience thankfully had a happy ending and also led to some innovation. Alyssa Borden in Vermont has the story.
Piece by piece, these machines are turning out life-saving products in more ways than one.
We've been working for 20 years now trying to protect kids.
That's George DeSalle Jr., the founder of Safety Caps. Unfortunately, it was a personal experience with his daughter that led the entrepreneur to make these child-safe plug protectors better.
One day I was vacuum cleaning and I took out a standard size outlet plug from the wall and set it on the table. And as I was vacuum cleaning, I don't know if I knocked it off the table or she reached up and grabbed it, but it was when I turned around, it was in her mouth and she was choking.
DeSalle was able to save his daughter's life, but the encounter left a lasting impact for this Fairfax dad.
After that, I started really researching these caps and realized that why are they selling me a product made to protect my kid that can really kill my kid, and it didn't make any sense.
With a newly sparked passion to protect his kid and others, DeSalle spent time making phone calls to outlet plug companies, asking them to change their design.
I even got like 2,000 signatures from doctors and lawyers all around the country and sent it to the CPSC, asking them to change this law. And they wouldn't do it. They said, we're not changing anything.
So DeSalle got his hands on a small parts test cylinder designed to show what poses a choke hazard for kids. To no surprise, DeSalle says the safety plugs fit right in. He was determined to make one that didn't, and in the early 2000s, he launched Safety Caps. With a design that mimics a pacifier, these caps are wider and have holes allowing for airflow and easier removal should they somehow get stuck in the throat.
My hole is 1/4 inch the same size, allowing it, if it goes into the soft tissue of the throat, not to choke the child.
It's a mission George's wife, Estelle, was happy to support, despite taking her husband away from stay-at-home dad duties.
Regardless of whether it made us any money or not, it was a safety feature that was necessary to go forward and make. I'm glad that we have a product that can help other people, other families, and it's of course our #1 baby shower gift.
While the idea was born in Fairfax, the caps are made at T&M Enterprises in Shaftesbury, capable of turning out as many as 40,000 caps a day.
So our goal is to get as many of these into the hands of as many people as we can and in many ways as we can.
The caps are available to buy in bulk and with your business's logo on them on the Safety Caps website.
Up next, emergency radio dead zones are a huge challenge for first responders. We investigate an issue schools across the country may be unaware of until there's a problem. Many schools across the country have taken extensive steps to ensure students are safe from outside danger, with metal detectors, cameras, and locks becoming commonplace. But many districts are unaware of a massive security risk that makes it difficult for first responders to do their jobs. Reporter David Hodges in Charlotte finds out how one district is addressing radio dead zones.
So Guilford County has about 125 schools.
Mike Ritchie, Alan Perdue, and Ross Pearson have been working to make the halls of Guilford County schools safer.
It was about a 4-month process in testing every single school.
It's not as discernible as detectors or as visible as cameras, but it's a major security flaw.
All I was 14, 5, and then you broke out.
Radio dead zones, where first responders can't communicate inside school buildings.
Well, I think just the magnitude of how big the problem is, and knowing how frustrating it is as a first responder, whether you're a firefighter, a law enforcement officer, or a medic, you go inside a building and you can't communicate.
Perdue's work as a fire marshal, county commissioner, and head of the Safer Buildings Coalition has taught him that communication is critical, and radio dead zones for first responders can be deadly, especially in schools.
Can you call for help? And it's not just public safety radios, it's cell coverage. Can you call 911 when you need it?
This problem can be hard to visualize, but here's one way you can see it. Our live signal dropped during National Signing Day here at Providence High School. We use these backpacks right here in order to stream a live signal, but when it mattered most, the signal cut out.
When we're disconnected, we're less safe. There's no question about it.
It's why Purdue and Ritchie worked with first responders to test schools in Guilford County, identify the dead zones, and contract out the work to enhance first responder radios in the schools where that signal is blocked.
Why we have the 2 different antennas on the roof, one for each system.
They called Ross Pearson and Pearson Wireless to fix the problems they found. WBTV viewers might remember Pearson from our previous reporting when we tested first responder radio dead zones in public places across Charlotte.
We found over time in responses that when you have a communication breakdown, especially in an emergency, things don't go as well as they should.
Nowhere is that reality felt more than in Uvalde, Texas. 19 children and 2 adults were killed in a mass shooting at Robb Elementary School. A committee investigating the shooting found that upon entering the building, officers were unable to communicate on their radios.
We count on first responders for that safety. We count on police, fire, EMS. And if they can't do their job, then they can't keep our kids safe. And that's my number one job, that's my number one focus. It's what I lose sleep over at night, is keeping our kids safe.
The chief of police in Uvalde had to call dispatch on his cell phone and reported they had the shooter surrounded, but they didn't have radio.
It seems so obvious that this should be a major safety focus. Why do you think it's not as much as some places?
I think it's out of sight, out of mind. Think of it this way. Who's the most important person in your life? And imagine you walk into a building and they need help. Are they going to get it? That's what this comes down to.
And in Guilford County, they are. They are going to get that help.
Another safety measure some schools have implemented is requiring students to wear clear backpacks. The thought is these transparent bags will deter kids from bringing unwanted items such as weapons to class. But do they actually make things safer? Riley Wyatt in Richmond spoke with security experts to find out.
I think the parents have actually been really excited about the clear backpacks.
Thousands of students across RPS walking the halls with clear backpacks, now a requirement for all students. Jennifer Smith, the principal at Blackwell Preschool, says this new measure is already helping families talk more openly about safety.
Just really having those conversations has helped and will help to make sure that everybody is looking out for the safety of our students throughout the building and outside of the building.
But longtime security expert Mike Jones tells me this policy is only treating the symptom of a bigger problem.
When children and family are involved, we try to do everything we can to make them safe and secure. Unfortunately, the clear backpack phenomenon is not a panacea for smuggling in weapons or narcotics or knives.
Jones says the clear backpacks are not foolproof. At a recent presentation, he showed parents you can still hide items.
I took a unloaded pistol, put it in the clear plastic bag, and I wrapped it in the middle school t-shirt. Well, I said, "You're about to be surprised, but don't be shocked." I said, "Because the gun in that bag is unloaded." "Well, I don't see a gun." And I unloaded it, and everyone was like, just stunned. So when it comes to things like this, the worst thing you can do is create an environment of false safety. Because when you create that false safety environment, you stop looking.
After that mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, the school adopted the same clear bag policy. It was a restriction that faced backlash because a clear backpack wouldn't have stopped the shooter who was carrying an AR-15. The following year, the restriction was lifted.
Let's give the schools the training, which many of them don't get, the ability to know what threat management is, and how to de-escalate things.
Jones says parents should avoid letting their guard down. Still make sure you're checking your kids' backpacks before they head out the door. And speak up if you think your child may have brought something dangerous to school.
Say something. It's better for your child to be expelled than buried.
Coming up, a financial expert gives her tips for women battling the wage gap. especially working moms. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes. Millions of working moms in the U.S. say they struggle with questions of guilt surrounding the balance of work and family life. And new Bankrate research finds those concerns are often heightened when you look at the salary differences between men and women. In this week's Watching Your Wallet, consumer investigator Rachel DePapa talks to a Bankrate analyst about the steps working moms can take to better their situations.
Bankrate looked at the Census Bureau's current population survey and found the data shows mothers earned 31% less in wages than fathers in 2023. We're talking about women with an average median salary of around $55,000 versus men with an average of $72,000. Bankrate analyst Alex Gailey found mothers' earnings and career growth oftentimes suffer. Experts call this the motherhood penalty.
And that's something that I consistently hear from working mothers is that, they want to continue progressing in their career. They want to continue growing there and they don't want to take a step back, but they kind of feel like they have to make a tough decision. And ultimately, women more likely to pick their families over their career.
Gailey says there are things women can do to build wealth over time, and it really just comes down to focusing on what you can control on an individual level.
Automating your finances as much as possible will just allow you to build wealth over time without thinking too hard about it. So automate your contributions to your high yield savings account. Automate your contributions to your retirement account. Just automate this stuff as much as possible. If you have maybe a budgeting app that you can just use that automatically filters in all of your data and how you're spending and just does the work for you, these are things that just make your life easier.
Gailey says make sure you are advocating for yourself at review time or when you're looking for a new job. Don't be afraid to negotiate and have a good support network, other working moms you can bounce ideas off of. And when you're ready to negotiate, she says, come to the table with research, data, your arguments, and make your points very clear.
And that's it for us. Thanks for joining us here on Investigate TV Plus Weekend. Hope to see you next week.